Hello and welcome to episode 63 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark, and this episode is going to be big. I've been building it up now for a good week on social media, and you've probably guessed who it is by now. On today's episode, I'm going to be joined by Ron Perlman. Yes, you heard me right, and I'm absolutely buzzing, and I can't wait to share this episode with you. What a dream guest, and one that I can't believe that's actually happened, so I'm thrilled, and it's going to be coming up very, very shortly. But in true Mark and Me fashion, let's talk about the last episode. I was joined by Marilyn Gigliotti, and the response was absolutely phenomenal. I love the fact that she took the time to read everyone's responses and personally reply to everyone on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and I've been speaking to her since. It's one of her favourite interviews that she's ever done, and the response was magical. So thanks for everyone that took the time to comment, and I really do know just how much Marilyn appreciated it. So back on to today's episode. Yes, Ron Perlman is going to be joining me, and we're talking all things movies, we're talking about his career, all the stuff that got him into acting. I think we should just get to it. This is a big moment for Mark and me, so let's have a beer, and here it is, me and Ron Perlman. Hey Ron, how you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm very well. Have you had a good day of press so far?
Yes. I've learned a lot of stuff about how much shit I have. I don't know what you wanted to talk to me for when you could get Mads Mikkelsen.
That was a long morning. We had a coffee and it ended up turning into an all-day drinking session, but it was good fun, so it was good.
God bless that Mads.
He's a good man.
He can drink too, can't he?
Massively. So what I wanted to do is for the listeners out there today is take it right back to the start and find out what it was that actually triggered you to want to become an actor when you were growing up.
I don't know. It's hard to answer that in one single way. My dad was a movie freak.
Yeah.
And his heroes back in the day are my heroes now. You know, Errol Flynn, Clark Gable, Spencer Tracy, Cagney, Bogart, Barbara Stanwyck, Gene Arthur, Frank Capra, John Ford, John Wayne, of course. He turned me on to all those things pretty much as they were happening or right after they were happening in the early days of television broadcasting, because I was born in 1950. And so there's that. There's this whole appreciation for the magic of movies. On a personal level, in high school, they were casting a school play. I was forced into going to the audition because they couldn't get any boys to come. All these girls wanted to audition, no boys. And because I was the only boy that showed up, of course, I got the lead because the lead was a guy, a male. The kind of process of losing myself and turning into somebody who was much more fun than me, much more interesting than me, much smarter than me, and then putting that up in front of an audience where for the 2 hours that the play was on, I could hear a pin drop out there and everybody was waiting on my next word. I said to myself, holy shit. I mean, this is an existential boner. Like, you know, being on a stage and holding 1,000 people in the palm of your hand and getting them to react to your every nuance.
Yeah.
There's something incredibly powerful about that. That in conjunction with the fact that I get to not be me for a while. I get to be this creation that sprung out of this writer's imagination, and it's a much more interesting version of me than I could ever be. So a lot of boxes get checked off.
Yeah.
And then you realize that the way it's affecting you is almost like aphrodisiacal. You know where I'm going with this, right?
Definitely.
I don't think that's a word, but you know, it's a very kind of sexual empowering feeling when you're acting, and it becomes like all sexually powerful, attractive feelings that you feel all the way down to through your loins and to your toes. It's something that you start seeking more of.
Yeah.
And the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it. And it just became this thing. It became part of my identity that I was going to find ways to be acting. So it took me 2 years through high school, and then another 4 years through undergraduate school, and then 2 more years through graduate school. And by the time I was done with my schooling, I had 8 years of stage experience under my belt. And it was just a foregone conclusion that I would go to New York and try to see if it would translate into making a living.
So when you were doing all these stage plays for so long, and then you obviously transferred to actual movies and TV, was that quite challenging? Did you find that kind of transition real difficult, or was it quite a breeze?
Still do.
Yeah.
still,
Yeah.
still wondering, is this my last one? Is there going to be another phone call? Will there be, will I have to keep proving myself to the world? When can I coast? It's kind of a harrowing existence being a professional actor, because there's nothing guaranteed. There's no rhyme or reason to when you're hot and when you're not. Yeah, it doesn't get any easier, and it's very, I'll think of the word. Anyway, let's move on.
So as we're sitting here right now, your career is over 3 decades, which is mind-blowing, and, you said it doesn't get any easier and it gets more challenging, but surely with all that experience and variety of roles under your belt, it must feel like you're in a good place. Not many actors have a 30-year career now. You see these stars and they drift away quite quickly.
I'm in a very, very good place, and I don't mean for it to sound like it's as hard now as it was, in those early days when nobody knew who I was. I had to do nothing but prove myself, and I had to continue to do it over and over and over again. And you're only as good as your last thing, and sometimes they were awful. Yeah, there's been a huge trajectory, and the period I'm in right now is so satiating in terms of the opportunities that are coming my way, the roles that I'm getting to play, the writers I'm getting to, whose work I'm getting to sort of try to help breathe life into, the other actors I'm working with, filmmakers, etc. That if it all ended right now, I would say, this was the most satisfying version of all the things I dreamed about when I was younger than I could ever have imagined, and way beyond. So, I'm in a really good place, and I'm okay if it all ended right now.
Looking at your career there, obviously touching on the fact that you've worked with such a great range of writers, directors, actors. For me, the unique partnership you have with Del Toro is like nothing else. From the moment you formed on Kronos up to Hellboy, what's it like to work with such an absolute genius?
The funny thing is that, there's this kind of like peripheral knowledge that you're working with a genius, but Del Toro is such a kind of a sprightly, prepubescent, there's a side of him that's very kind of adolescent and very kind of vaudevillian, that the last thing you think of is that you're working with a genius. You're working with somebody who's just as funny as a motherfucker.
Yeah.
As fun to be around, and as filled with, complete non sequiturs, and the shit that comes out of his mouth is always delightful and always a surprise. And he invites an esprit de corps on the movie set that doesn't feel like you're reinventing the wheel, or that you're making something that's going to live in the pantheon of movies for the rest of eternity. It feels like you're just a bunch of degenerates, trying to like recreate what must have been like to be one of the Three Stooges,
Yeah.
And so that's the day-to-day, minute-to-minute kind of ambiance of being around Del Toro. And then you watch him do the commentary on one of his movies, and you feel like you're watching, like a Nobel Prize winner, describe, what it was like to gestate over, one of the greatest pieces of art ever invented, and you can't believe it's the same guy.
And what was it like, the fact that he put up such a fight to make sure that you were cast as Hellboy? He was rooting for you. He was like a cheerleader. He was not going to back down. You must have been so honoured that he had so much trust and respect for you.
Well, it was, I've said this on many occasions and, in many interviews, I have never witnessed an act like it in my life. I'm not sure anyone else has, for that matter. And I'm absolutely sure I'll never witness anything like it again. Without exaggeration, he could have made that movie 10 times over in the 7 years that he fought to get the role to be mine. And even I was saying to him, Guillermo, I understand the act of love that's going into your loyalty toward this vision, but it's never going to happen. it's too good a movie to not make. Just fucking make the movie. I'll be there on opening night. I'll be cheering for you. You know, I don't care if it's with The Rock or Nick Cage or whoever else is on their list. You know, just fucking make it. And he says, yes, Ron, you're right. I will make it. Fuck it. I will make it. And he was lying to me the whole time. He was never going to make it unless he made it the way he wanted to make it. You just don't see that. I mean, on that level, when there's that much money at stake and when there's that much career-changing kind of, you know, things that are suggested, if like, once we finally get this thing off the ground, man, everybody's life's going to change. You don't see people make those choices, ever. And so I feel as though I was the recipient of something very unique. It's definitely changed the trajectory of my career, but also my personal life, you know.
Yeah.
It made the world look at me differently. It made me more bankable, more attractive. It changed the direction of the flow that came my way as an actor, which in turn, you know, benefited my family and my personal life and my quality of life. I mean, it was just a gift that kept giving. And I'm not sure Guillermo will ever truly understand, no matter how many times I thank him, no matter how many times I articulate this in the press and in real life, the impact that he had on me. But it'll never be forgotten.
And what are your thoughts of the fact that only in a few weeks we're getting a brand new film of Hellboy? It seems very soon. It doesn't feel like the film's been out long enough to have this whole reboot already.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's really not for me to comment on any of that, even though I've said way too much already. But, yeah, it's like, it's the direction that particular title took is really none of my business.
Yeah.
I had a chance to play that character twice under circumstances that can never be duplicated, and I'm really proud of what we did. That's all I'll say.
Hopefully one day we'll get that final third film that we've all been pining for many years.
Yeah, I won't stop fighting for it. But
one of my favourite things about you as an actor is the kind of vast array of different roles you do. You never typecast yourself into the same role. Looking at your IMDb page, looking at your career history, you don't ever know what to expect from your next announcement in casting, and I think that's really rare in Hollywood. It's such a thing that I respect for you, that the fact that you have done such an array of roles. It's crazy the amount of different types of characters you've played. It's a real honour, you know.
Well, thanks. You know, it's been it was a weakness and a curse for the first half of my career that's actually turned into a strength and a blessing. I mean, you know, the way you describe it is actually the truth of it. But in the first half of my career, the fact that there was nothing that was kind of, no fingerprint had ever been kind of, you know, definitively put in the sand. So nobody actually ever knew what to do with me. And it would take sometimes years and years for my next job to come along. This is pre-50.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, a guy like Jean-Jacques Annaud or a guy like Guillermo del Toro would emerge and say, okay, here's your next one. And I would go, holy fuck, what an amazing character, what an amazing project. And then 2 or 3 years would go by before I got the next one. And it was simply because nobody quite knew what to do, because nobody quite knew what I did well. And somehow that shifted in the second half of my life when I got to be an older guy. I don't know why. I don't have an answer to the difference in the zeitgeist that causes that shift, but I'm grateful. And it's kind of the way I always wanted it to be. You know, I never really wanted to be pigeonholed. My favorite actors were the guys who disappeared behind the work, you know, who were completely different every time you saw them, you know, the real character actors. I consider that to be really cool and really noble and really definitive kind of description of the craft.
Yeah.
And for you to say that means a lot to me.
You obviously directed one of the episodes of Beauty and the Beast, and with actors now like Bradley Cooper and Ben Affleck going off and having a career in directing, is that something that maybe you'd like to look at doing a lot more of in the future?
Well, there's this one movie I've been carrying around with me for like 19 years that I'm going to direct, and it's about two brothers, and I've only ever had the right brother, one at a time, which is still haven't done it. But I mean, I think I don't have any real taste in my mouth to become a director. I just want to direct that movie because I feel very strongly about that. So I'd like to get that done, and then that'll be that. I really do love producing, though. You get the same kind of satisfaction out of producing as you do out of directing, because you're involved in every decision. You're involved in the hiring of the entire cast and crew, and figuring out the financing, figuring out the marketing of it, figuring out the cast of it. There's no decision that needs to be made that you're not involved in as a producer. So that's kind of satiating my desire to have a more holistic relationship with movie making.
19 years to carry a film around, that's a long time.
I know.
If you finally do it, you might turn around and get this absolute buzz for it and be like, this is all I want to do now, and just do a sequel to it, or it might give you that taste then to be like, why the fuck have I been an actor? I want to be a director.
Yeah.
But
I'll be the first guy who's ever started his directing career while wearing a diaper.
Yeah.
And not for the right reason.
No. And at the moment, you're promoting your new film, Hitman Redemption, or Asher as it was in America, playing the contract killer. I saw the film yesterday, and I think it's brilliant. It's got a John Wick kind of feel. It's very sleek. I like the violence, but nothing for me beats the hunter becomes hunted sort of concept in a film. Now, how did you get involved in this movie?
They sent it to me around 6 years ago to see if I would attach myself to play Asher.
Yeah.
And it happened to arrive right at the moment where Wing and a Prayer Pictures had received enough funding to actually hang out a shingle and go into business producing movies. So I found out that Asher had no financing. It became the first movie that Wing and a Prayer optioned, and it became emblematic of kind of the brand that we were looking to form. The model being the exploration of the anti-hero that emerged out of America in the 60s and 70s with like Scorsese and Coppola and Friedkin. The blemished figure who you couldn't take your eyes off, and you didn't know why, because he was often very flawed. Asher to me was a great example of a movie that you might have seen back then, with like a Lee Marvin or a Gene Hackman or something like that.
Yeah. And what was it like working with Richard Dreyfuss? Because my favourite film of all time is Jaws, and I think the guy's an absolute legend. Was he as good as you'd hoped when you met him on set and got to work with him every day? I
just had the hair on the back of my neck rise when you asked me the question, because that's what it was like being with him all the time. I mean, Duddy Kravitz, Jaws, Goodbye Girl, Close Encounters, that movie that he made, Mr. Something, where he's the music teacher.
Yeah.
But Richard Dreyfuss has hit a home run every single time he's been on the screen, and he's had such an effect on me as an audience member and as a guy who appreciates, what you can do when you're not necessarily the most handsome, tall, sex symbol in terms of carrying a film, just with pure commitment and charisma and magic. So being alongside him and knowing, holy shit, you signed on to do this dream project of mine. I don't know why you did, but I'll accept the fact that you recognize something that I did, and so somehow you and I are kind of like spending this moment in this parallel universe of admiration, and I'll never forget it. It was beautiful, and he's everything you had hoped when you meet him. He's so incredibly curious about why we do what we do. He's incredibly in love with the craft. He loves acting. He spends a huge amount of time telling anecdotes and stories. He's very much in love with his past and very much involved in his present and what's to come. So he doesn't disappoint.
That makes me so happy, because they sometimes say don't meet your heroes, or you never want to hear a bad story, but with Jaws being so iconic and my most watched film, I want him to be like Hooper when I meet him. I want him to be that kind of, that personality and that lovable character, you know?
Yeah, he is.
Oh, wow. And a lot of the listeners that listen to this podcast are up-and-comers, so they're people that are directing films or going out to acting school, and they tune in to listen to these actors and the interviews. Now, what advice do you give to those people that are trying to make a name for themselves and get into an industry at the moment that is so difficult to make a name for yourself?
You happen to be living in a time now where the tools in order to make a movie you can get at the Mac store, for under $1,000.
Yeah.
Fucking Soderbergh shot his last movie on his iPhone. So the answer to that question has always been, you want it bad enough, just do it. Find a way to either write a script. If you're not a writer, I'm not a writer, then just read as many things as you can until you find something that you love, and then call all your friends on the phone and ask for favors and beg, borrow, and steal, and just get it on screen and start showing it to people. You not only have the iPhone where you can make a fucking movie, like from cradle to grave, but you have YouTube, you have all kinds of ways to get it seen by people, which I didn't have when I was a kid. I had to depend on breaking into the edifices that were already built, that had their gates guarded, and you had to break down walls in order to be noticed. We're living in a time now where whatever you think you can create it and have it seen. Take advantage of that. Just keep doing your thing, and try not to do what somebody else did. Or if you do, make sure your heroes are worthy of emulating them and inspiring you.
Amazing advice. And what's the future looking like for you now? Obviously, you've said you've got this film that you've been carrying around with that you want to direct at some point, but what about acting sort of roles? Have you got quite a lot in the pipeline over the next sort of, couple of years?
There's a few things I'm developing for television. I have a lot of movies in the pipeline to produce, none of which have roles for me. The acting thing is kind of like, I let the universe take care of that.
Yeah.
When I want to be in control, that's where the producing thing comes in, where I identify scripts that I want to spend time trying to raise and figure out how to get done. So there's a lot of that going on right now. There are no acting jobs on the horizon at the current time, which is good because I've spent the last year and a half working nonstop from one thing to another. I'm kind of tired.
Yeah.
So I could use a little bit of a breather.
And then obviously having a family and stuff, it must be quite hard to get the balance right, that you can commit to being a family man, being at home, but also travelling around the world, getting these roles done and, building on your career.
Well, I've been really lucky. My family's always understood how much this does for me personally and how good it is for the family in general when Dad's working. So it's never been too much of a burden to try to walk the tightrope. I'm one of the lucky ones.
And then looking back at your career, is there anything that you kind of feel that you still want to achieve? I know you said about halfway into this interview that if it was all taken now, you'd be happy, but is there a role that you're really key to get involved in, or a director you want to work with, or are you really satisfied with everything up to this date?
Well, there's a lot of directors I want to work with, that's for sure.
I want to see you with Christopher Nolan. I think that would be amazing.
I mean, I'd like to just spend one day on a Paul Thomas Anderson movie,
or wow, on
a Coen Brothers movie. This guy Paolo Sorrentino, I can't remember his name. You know who I mean? The guy who made The Young Pope with Jude Law.
Yes.
He's like the new Coppola for me. He somehow puts these images on the screen that are just indelible. I'd love to, hopefully hook up with him at some point. Yeah, there's a lot of filmmakers that I really, really would love to just be around to watch their process and have them manipulate me into their beautiful visions. But no, I mean, in terms of roles, it's been more than I could ever have imagined in terms of the swath of humanity that I've gotten to explore. So I just leave that to the gods.
I think I've gone over the time I was allocated, so I just wanted to say a massive thank you for coming on the podcast, and it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you today.
Pleasure's been mine, my friend. Thank you very much for having me.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and Ron Perlman. Yes, even when I say it out loud, it doesn't sound real, but it did happen, and a guest that I've been wanting to get on Mark and Me since I started podcasting. So for me personally, it's a dream come true. Ron right now is promoting his brand new film, which is Hitman Redemption, and you can pre-order this right now on Amazon, and it's out on the 13th of May. I love the film. Hey, it had him and Richard Dreyfuss in. What more do you need? Do you know what I mean? The casting alone made me want to buy it. Right now as well, guys, you can go on to markandme.com. On there, you can go on to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, my email address, or you can support me on my Patreon page. All the money that you guys subscribe to on Patreon goes straight back into the Mark and Me fund and means I can travel and do more and more podcasts and get you episodes more and more. And at the moment, you're getting a weekly episode, so it's worth that minimum. I think it's like 60, 70p. And right now as well, I'm giving away some awesome goodies. Only last week, one of my biggest supporters, Martin, won this awesome Lost Boys bundle. Got this t-shirt, this rare Funko Pop, some Star Wars toys. It's really worth it. And hey, if you don't want to support me on Patreon, that's absolutely fine. The podcasts have and always will remain free, and they're all on Spotify, iTunes and Podomatic. Again, it's been an absolute thrill. I want to thank Ron for coming on the podcast. Hopefully one day we can do a follow-up to this and talk even more. Thank you to you guys for listening to the podcast. And again, I'll be back in a week's time with a brand new episode of Mark and Me. Take care, everyone.
Out of the tree of life, I just picked me a plum. You came along and everything started into hum. Still, it's a real good bet, the best is yet to come. Best is yet to come, and babe, won't that be fine? You think you've seen the sun, but you ain't seen it shine. Wait till the warm-up's underway. Wait till our lips have met. And wait till you see that sunshine day. You ain't seen nothing yet. The best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be fine? Best is yet to come, come the day you're mine. Come the day you're mine. I'm gonna teach you to fly. We've only tasted the wine. We're gonna drain the cup dry. Wait till your charms are ripe for these arms to surround. You think you've flown before, but baby, you ain't left the ground. Wait till you're locked in my embrace. Wait till I draw you near. Wait till you see that sunshine place. Ain't nothing like it here. The best is yet to come, and babe, won't it be fine? The best is yet to come, come the day you're mine. Come the day you're mine, and you're gonna be mine.